All right, today we are going to be talking about simple interest. Okay, so we're going to learn to compute our simple interest. Now let's take a look at our four vocabulary words. Our first vocabulary word here is interest, which is the amount of money charged for borrowing or using money. This is, if you use a credit card, the credit card companies charge you interest. If you ever get like a bank loan, to buy or a mortgage to buy a house or to buy a car or something like that, they charge you interest. That's, I guess, the fee that the bank charges you for loaning you money. Okay. Simple interest is a fixed percent of the principal. It is found by using the formula I equals PRT, where P represents the principal, R the rate of interest, and T the time. Okay, the R is always going to be our percent. That's our and you'll see that here in a moment on our examples. The principal is the initial amount of money borrowed or saved. And finally, the rate of interest is the percent charged or earned on an amount of money. All right, let's take a look at our first example. All right, it says, when you borrow money from the bank, you pay interest for the use of the bank's money. When you deposit money into a savings account, you are paid interest, albeit a very, very small amount of interest. You'd have to have an extremely large amount of money to see any growth. I don't even know what the percent is, but it's the current interest rate on a savings account is less than 1%. Okay, so it's like, I don't know, 0.5% or something like that, which means like for every $100 that you have invested, you would basically get like 50 cents. And that's probably high. 0.5% is probably higher than what it really is. So you'd have to have a huge amount of money to actually make any money on that. So our simple interest is one type of fee paid for the use of the money. And here it gives us a diagram of our formula, I equals PRT, and tells us, again, what each of these equals. Now remember, your R is usually going to be a percent. Now remember, whenever we multiply times a percent, remember we have to change it to a decimal first. All right, let's take a look at our first actual example. Here it says, to buy a car, Jessica borrowed $15,000 for 3 years at an annual simple interest rate of 9%. How much interest will she pay if she pays the entire loan off at the end of the 3rd year? What is the total amount of money that she will repay? That's two different amounts there. Okay, because whenever you repay your total amount, remember you also have to repay the principal, like the money that you borrowed. It'd be super awesome if you could go to the bank and say, like, hey, I need to borrow $10,000, and they charge you interest, on that money, but you only had to pay back the interest, and you didn't have to pay back the $10,000. That'd be great. But that's not how it works. You have to pay back the $10,000 you borrowed, and also the interest. Which on this one she borrowed, $15,000. So let's plug in these numbers into our formula here. So the I, that's what we're looking for right here. We don't know what that is. We're trying to find that. Okay. We know the principal is 15,000. We know that. So we know we're going to have our I equals 15,000 times our rate, which is 9%. How would we write that as a decimal? Yeah, 0.09 times our time. And how much time? 3 years. Okay, so if we take our 15,000, multiply that times 0.09, and then multiply that times 3, that's going to give us $4,050. So we know that my interest is $4,050. And yes, on this assignment, I am going to let you guys use calculator, because otherwise it'll take you the entire time just to figure out one answer. Okay, so the amount of interest she's going to have to pay back is $4,050. That's the amount of money she has to pay for the bank just letting her use money. Okay? Now, 9% is kind of high, but depending on what kind of car you buy and depending on your credit score, that's actually probably about accurate. So let's take a look at the total amount, because it also asks us for the total amount. Don't forget about that. Okay, I don't want you guys to miss these questions because you forget to put an answer. Yes, this is part of my answer right here. $4,050 is my interest. But now I need to figure out the total amount she's going to have to repay. Well, to figure that out, to figure our total, all we have to do is take our interest and add the principal to that. So we would have our $15,000 plus our what, $4,050? Which gives us what, $19,050? All right, so basically for that $15,000 car, is that what she, or does it even say car? It doesn't say car. It just says that she borrowed. For that $15,000 that she borrowed, it's going to cost her $19,050 total. Okay, I thought it was up there somewhere. Yeah. So, but that's how much it's going to cost you. So that car is going to cost her $19,000.50, even though or not $19,050, even though she borrowed $15,000 to purchase the car. Okay. Questions on how we found that? It's not very difficult as long as you follow the formula. Yes, sir. Well, the question was how is she going to pay back the money if she doesn't have that much money in the first place? Well, we don't always, whenever you have a job, they don't just give you all your money up front for the year. So, yeah, you make monthly payments. Now, if we were to take, 3 years is 36 months, and if she's making monthly payments, so if we took $19,050 divided by 36, that means her monthly payments would be $529. Well, that's much more affordable than, say, $19,000. So if you have a job where you get paid $1,000 a month, then you might be able to afford to make a car payment of $529. Now, you won't be able to buy gas for it or eat or anything else, but you'll be able to have a car that you owe $19,050 for over 3 years. So that's how you afford to buy, because very, very few people can afford to pay cash for big purchases like cars and houses and things. I mean, you know how long, there's probably other people besides Bill Gates, but how long, let's say you bought a $150,000 house, which is probably average in today's market, but do you know how long it would take you to save up $150,000? I mean, let's say you're making $50,000 a year, which is not too bad. Well, but you're also, just because you make 50, just because your job says you make $50,000 a year, you don't really make that much. You still have to pay taxes, health insurance, all these other things that come out of there. So even if you were managed to spend no money at all, and you got paid $50,000 cash, which doesn't happen, it'd still take you 3 years. But where are you going to live for those 3 years? I guess you live at home with your parents, maybe. Yeah, a box or tent. But you don't have a car because remember, you saved up that $50,000 cash, so you don't have a car payment. You're not buying gas. You saved all your money for 3 years straight. Didn't buy anything. That's impossible.
Yeah. Well, unless you go and steal. If you were a master.
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to where your parents will let you live with them forever, and you can just buy all your things, and you can just save $50,000 a year and pay cash for a house, then that's awesome. But that's not most of us. So.
If you were a master.
Anyways, so moving on, let's take a look at our last one. Now this one, this is the one I said I'm mostly going to be looking at the I, the P, the R, and the T on this one, because that's the first thing we really need to identify is our I, the P, the R, and the T. That's the first thing I need to identify on these word problems, because I need to know, first of all, I need to know what I'm missing, so I know what I'm looking for. But I also need to know my principal, my rate, my time, or my interest if that's what it's going to give me. So let's take a look at this. It says, Mr. Johnson borrowed $8,000 for 4 years to make home improvements. If he repaid a total of $10,320, at what interest rate did he borrow? So what are we missing here? Yeah, we're missing the interest rate. We're missing the R. This is what we don't know. That's what the question is asking us. But now we have to fill in the rest of that. Okay, which it says he borrowed $8,000. What is that? Yeah, that's the P. That's the principal. That's how much he borrowed. Okay, and what's our time? Yeah, 4 years. Our time is going to be 4. Now our interest, that's what it's asking us, but it's weird because we have another number over here. What is that? Is that the I? Well, is that what says? Somebody said that's what he paid total. So is that really the I? No. Yeah, that's what he repaid. So, well, yes, exactly. We have to subtract it. We have to subtract the total that he repaid from our principal. That'll tell us how much interest he paid. Because remember, the total, this number right here, it's telling us how much interest he paid plus the amount of money that he borrowed. So we would have to do our 10,320 minus my principal of 8,000. That'll give us our interest. What is that going to give us? 2,320? Okay, so that's my interest right there. Okay, so now if I were to set this up in our formula like what we were looking at earlier, we would have 2,320 equals 8,000 times my question mark. I don't even know what that is. That's what our question. That's what we're trying to figure out. Times 4. So this 8,000 times something times 4 equals 2,320. So, how do we figure that out? Well, we're going to multiply 8,000 times 4. Yeah, that's going to give me 32,000 times something. No. It's 32,000. Now, let me ask you, on these, whenever we were solving these equations right here, and we had some number times some number equals this over here, how would we find that? How would we find that missing number? Yeah, we have to divide because we're bringing that back across our equal sign. So we're going to have this number right here, 2,320, divided by 32,000, which I'm going to tell you it's going to give us a really small number, which is good because we want a really small number because remember our rate is a percent, so it's always going to be like a point, a decimal number. If we didn't get a decimal number, then we probably did something wrong. And divided by 32,000 gives me point. This is what my calculator says. Gives me 0.0725. Now, that's a decimal. That's not a percent. How do I change that to a percent?
Move over 2 places.
Yeah, move it over 2 places. So I would end up with 7.25%. So the interest rate that he's paying is 7.25%. Okay? Questions on that? No? All right. Then let's get to work.